Hi, everyone. This is Guy Powell. I am on the board of the Atlanta AMA, and I wanted to welcome everyone to our event today. It's titled The Pandemic Pivot, Learning from 2020 to Prepare for 2021. Lots of things going on certainly this year, and looking forward to a lot of more changes as we get further into 2021 and the pandemic starts to hopefully slow down. Before we get started, though, a couple of housekeeping things. If you want to tweet about the event, please use one of the hashtags down at the bottom, pound hashtag AMA Atlanta. That would be fantastic. And as one of the questions that typically comes up is that there's usually questions about whether the recording will be available, and yes, it will be. So before we get started, a couple of things I wanted to bring out. One of the most important things is that the AMA is helped significantly by our sponsors, and they really do a great job on here. And just to go through some of them, Nebo, great company in Atlanta. They provide a lot of our website services and a lot of other things, and really help out the whole underpinning of the organization. We have a couple of different levels as well, the Goodway Group, Heyorka, and Georgia Pacific. Today's event is going to be sponsored by Acquia, and we'll have Dan Hawkins here talking in a minute about exactly what they do, and then we are so happy today that they're supporting us. A couple of other ones, Hot House, VERT, Atlanta Journal and Constitution. We have a higher education sponsor in Mercer University, and then lastly, but not least, Google has put up some sponsorship for marketing scholarships, and that's a really big help here for marketing and marketing in the Atlanta area. Now, there are unfortunately a handful of names missing off of this page, and those belong to you. We would love to have many of you also sponsor events or sponsor the chapter or be a sponsor in some way. It's a great way to get involved, and then certainly be a part of growing and building out the marketing function within Atlanta. Just a couple of notes to a couple of upcoming events. The Innovation Marketing, one of the best series we have that really talks about some fascinating things coming up, and now for 2021 as we kind of prepare to move away from the pandemic. It's decoding D2C for 2021, so direct to consumer marketing, and lots of things going on there, especially as cookies change and the IDFA changes with Apple and what have you. The next event we've got coming up on February 26th is, again, as we know, there's been a lot of funny things going on this last year, and hopefully we're now moving away from that, but the pandemic, protests, and politics shaped 2020. Where do we go from here? That should be kind of a fascinating event, and all about us as marketers trying to figure out how we're going to still be able to support our businesses, and then also to look forward to the end of the pandemic. So for today, our sponsor is Acquia. And I'm going to introduce Dan Hawkins. He's the Senior Enterprise Account Executive, and as I mentioned, a lot of the events and a lot of activities that the AMA does every week, every month, every quarter, they are supported by the sponsors. They are critical for us, and we would love to have you as well as a sponsor. So let me turn it over to Dan, and all yours.
Thanks, Guy. And we are really, really excited to have the opportunity to sponsor today's Atlanta AMA session. As a local myself, I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to work with organizations every single day who are facing the task of having to make large digital pivots in their organization in response to the coronavirus. So bringing digital customer experience to the forefront of every conversation is definitely near and dear to our heart. And it's definitely a topic that is super important for any organization who's trying to make a shift to digital these days. Here at Acquia, we're in the business of helping companies create unique and memorable digital experiences with a connected open digital experience platform powered by the Acquia Marketing Cloud and Drupal Cloud, a unified solution that unlocks the value of data and content so that organizations can rapidly create new digital experiences. We provide a single, easy-to-use platform to build, personalize, and orchestrate multi-experience customer journeys across all modes of customer interactions, such as the web, email, chat, voice, and more. And with customers like the state of Georgia, who relies upon Acquia's safe and secure and reliable open DXP to power all customer experiences across the state, to showcase brands like Godiva and King Arthur Baking Powder, we provide teams with easy-to-use tools for marketing and IT to really create winning experiences with the freedom to move quickly without restraints. Next slide, Guy. And most recently, we were really pleased to be named a leader in the latest 2021 Gartner Magic Quadrant report for digital experience platforms. In the report, Acquia was recognized for our ability to execute and for the completeness of our vision. I'd encourage all of you to check out a free copy of this report on acquia.com today, where you can go and download a copy of the full report and check out how Acquia is doing these days. Next slide. Finally, as a thank you for joining us today, we'd like to offer you a free treat from SugarWish. To redeem this gift, just complete the form in this link within 72 hours of the event, and you'll receive an email from SugarWish with a link to choose your sweet treat. So we do appreciate the opportunity to sponsor today's event. Hope you have the opportunity to get yourself something sweet as well as thank you for joining us for this event today, and really excited about today's content. Thank you, Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and really appreciate your sponsorship. And definitely please sign in to get your SugarWish. I'm definitely a sugar fiend, and I do want to find out how many red sugars are in that one package there. So anyway, so to get started, I would like to introduce the moderator. His name is Jamie Turner, and he is an internationally recognized author, professor, and speaker at events and corporations around the globe. He and I have known each other now for quite a few years and always enjoy hearing him speak. You know, he has done some amazing things. He's been on CNN, and he has a handful of books. And I would recommend looking him up on Amazon and check out some of his books. He also has a YouTube channel and was designated one of the 8 best YouTube channels for business by wishpond.com. So Jamie, over to you.
Awesome, Guy. Thanks a lot. I had my phone ringing there. We turned off all notifications on my computer, forgot to do it on my lovely phone. We're going to have some fun here. One of the things we love to do when we do these kind of discussions is make sure that it's a conversation rather than just a monologue from people talking about all their expertise and things like that. We've got a great panel with us today. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to just go ahead and show your video so we can wave to the audience and all that sort of good stuff. You can unmute if you'd like. And in the meantime, while we're doing that, I would like to encourage everybody who's joining us as an attendee to go over to the chat feature and write in your name and what company you're working with, just to get you used to the chat feature. Because what we're going to do is make this a conversation. It's not intended to be us talking to y'all. It's intended to be a conversation where you can ask. So go down to the bottom, hit the chat feature at the bottom of the Zoom panel that you've got there. Over on the right-hand side, it should open up the chat feature. We've already got some people doing it, which is awesome. Check this out. We've got some great things going on here. Leah is joining us. Myra has joined us. We've got a ton of people who are joining us. Stacy is there. Deanna, excellent, terrific. Look at this. We've got a lot of really good people. There's Valerie. We've got Kimberly who's joined us. So here's why I'm doing that, is just to get y'all used to the idea of going over to the chat feature and actually engaging with it. Because as we're doing this panel discussion, we're going to go ahead and have you write questions in the chat feature so that we can pause, ask Doug a question, ask Dan a question, ask any of our panelists a question, so that we can then go in and make sure that we're doing all the right things. Mike, good to see you. Olivia, good to see you. We've also got Deanna there. So a lot of interesting people here. I'm going to go ahead and go around the room and ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. They're going to spend about 10, 15 seconds just explaining who they are, what their backgrounds are, and we'll move through so that you can know who they are as we get diving into the topic at hand. We're going to start with Doug Busk, who's a very good friend of mine. Doug, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and what you do currently.
Sure. Hi. Well, first of all, thank you, Jamie, and AMA for inviting and hosting me. It's my honor to be here, and it's doubly so given the wonderful peers on the panel as well. Um, all of whom I've enjoyed meeting, at least virtually. That's the best we can do these days. I am a marketing technologist by training and by hobby. So I tend to focus in my roles on the 3 Ps: the people that do the work, which is the most important, the processes by which they do it, and the platforms that help scale the stories they tell. So at Emory, I lead a function I designed called Enterprise Communications and Marketing. My team is basically air traffic control for all of the amazing stories Emory has to tell, both across academic silos and health sciences research. You can imagine on the latter side, given COVID-19, the team has been very busy, for really almost a full year running. And I'm thrilled that I have the chance to brag on their awesome work a little bit today.
Awesome, Doug. Thanks for joining us. And I see that we've got Alex Van Winkle, who's one of our attendees, as well as some other names I recognize over there. So hello to everybody on the attendee side of the equation. Doug just introduced himself. Let's run over to Yana, who is going to tell us a little bit about her experiences at Cox Automotive Group. Yana, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Yana Kirsten. I'm a Senior Director of Consumer Marketing at Cox Auto. So I lead brand media, performance marketing, social, and sports marketing. And what we focus on, my team focuses on, is ensuring that our brands are appearing in front of the right consumers and that we're driving their consumers to our sites.
Awesome. Terrific, Yana. That's great. We also have Josh with us. Josh, tell us, I would try to pronounce your last name, but I'd bungle it. So why don't you give us your first, last name, and what you do and where you're working?
Thanks, Jamie. So Josh Trifoli. I am the Senior Director of Marketing and Digital Engagement for Georgia Aquarium. And that's a pretty exciting place to be able to go. I put my background on today so I could remember what it looked like when I'm actually in the building. So with that kind of title, I am responsible for all the branding and marketing activities for the aquarium, and honored and excited to be part of this panel discussion. So thanks, y'all.
Cool. Good to have you here. And then we're also going to introduce Tuisha. Tuisha, tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing currently.
Yes, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Tuisha Rogers Simpson. I am the Vice President at Brand and Partnerships at the National Museum of African American Music, right here in the heart of Nashville. And what we do here is that we're a new attraction, a new institution, if you will, dedicated to telling the stories of Black music as well as African American history. My job is to oversee the brand, all of our marketing communications, as well as our social media, consumer experience, as well as partnerships is one of my favorite part of my jobs. Not only partnerships with community organizations, but also artists, our corporate partners, and anyone else who wants to do something great and grand to help us tell the story.
Awesome. Tuisha, I'm going to actually lead off with you. Our theme today is how each of the panelists managed through some challenges that we've had. You're opening a museum at the very moment that COVID happens. Tell us how you kind of handled that and what your strategy was to move through it.
Absolutely. So I know that makes me a little unique than my colleagues and my peers here, is that in the middle of the pandemic, we were scheduled to open. And anyone who's familiar with our story may know that we've been trying to open this museum for 20 years. Which is actually part of, and Josh may be able to co-sign or not co-sign, but part of an attraction is that you just don't pop it up and open it up. A good number of those years is just planning the building. What is the story? What are we going to do? What are we going to feature? But in all seriousness, when we got to the last year of really being able to open our doors, we were hit with the pandemic. And our strategy was, I think we were actually in a really cool place because we had to open up knowing that COVID exists. And so instead of us having to backtrack practices, we actually just included practices that will probably live forevermore in the museum. So when we think about our interactives, we already thought through how do these interactives work now that we have COVID. So we built in a process of including earmuffs on top of our earphones, ordering stylists for all of our touches. When we thought about staffing, we added the extra staff to clean up behind all of our interactives and behind the museum. We also just started thinking about, as we put the finishing touches on the museum, what are places of high touch, where are places that we can help control folks who are coming in, the flow of traffic. And so for us, you know, I don't want to sound, you know, just to be very transparent, what the pandemic allowed us to do is to probably prepare for any other emergency that's coming and to build it into our operations, if you will, and to put that consideration down to our time ticketing system, as well as how people come through the door. What does that experience look like? So our strategy was to say, let's embrace it and make it part of the museum opposed to a Band-Aid, if you will, but how we make this part of the attraction, the experience. And last but not least, it also really forced us to think about how we continue to have a museum that activates without walls. And for us, again, it was a little less reactive, but a little bit more proactive. And so for us, our digital platforms, as well as our in and what I would call our in and out of person experiences, go hand in hand. Everything we're thinking about from this point forward will have an in-person touch and a digital touch. Because again, the pandemic forced us to think that way. So those are some strategies that we definitely put in place, and just how we're continuously thinking about the museum as we continue to have guests come in, either in person or virtually.
Good. And what I heard there is you took action. You put together a plan quickly, took action on it. And I bet a lot of our attendees are going through the same thing in terms of their facilities, their marketing programs, all that sort of stuff, which is to put together a strategy and then take action. Now, the theme here again is pivots.
Yep.
As it relates to COVID. So great answer, Tuisha. This is not a museum-centric conversation. However, I'm going to turn to Josh because he's had a similar thing, and he happens to work at the Georgia Aquarium, which is not necessarily a museum, but the same kind of facility. Josh, tell us what your experience was on this.
Well, I think that it was the exact same kind of thing that Tuisha exactly mentioned, right? It's like, how do we pivot from, well, she had a slightly different situation because she was starting fresh, but we needed to be able to make that pivot, right? So it was, how do we become relevant and keep people excited about the aquarium, and really just to stay top of mind with our fans so that we can keep people moving. So we had to shut the doors in March, and with zero income coming through and zero people in the building, how do we focus and stay top of mind for our guests? And that was a huge pivot point that we needed to do. And to Jamie's, to your statement earlier, we had to do that quickly, right?
Good. Excellent. Thanks, Josh. I'm going to ask the next question for Doug, but before I do, I'm going to ask each attendee, if you can, in one sentence or less, well, in one sentence, I don't want you to do less than one sentence. Right in the chat feature, what you did, what action steps you did to make the change once COVID hit your business. And it can either be a marketing change or a physical change. While you're doing that, I'm going to open it up to Doug. He's got Doug, I'm going to hit you up with your third question. I'm going to throw you a curveball here, which is, did COVID blow up your plans, and how did it blow up your plans? What happened for you with everything that you were working on?
Yeah, my primary takeaway was at the outset of the crisis. So I sent my team to work from home on March 13th, which happened to be Friday the 13th, as it turned out. So memorable for a lot of reasons. And my team at that point had been fully staffed up just over a year. So as I mentioned at the top of the meeting, this was a new function inside of Emory. And it really felt like we had just barely put the paint on the battleship, and it was getting pushed out into stormy seas very quickly. And so the thought I had in the first 2 weeks when we were working from home was, whenever you get into a new role, you might want to think about what you would need in wartime and do that. What would you need in a crisis that you've identified after your first, few weeks or months on the roll that you would absolutely need? Do that first, because things that I managed to get the budget around or get funding for and just barely get in place in month 8, 9, or 10 turned out to be absolutely critical in this crisis, and would have benefited from probably another 5 or 6 months to do so in person. or while we could still be in person. So my primary takeaway is, even if you start a new role in peacetime, think about what your team, your organization, your leadership would need in wartime and do that. So in answer to the question, did COVID blow up our plans? Even though some of those plans were just recently laid on the university side, and I'll talk about the healthcare side in a moment, it in fact only proved those plans and hardened them. And the other glory, if you will, of crisis is it allows you to dispense with that which is not working quickly. You can just drop it. That's not working. One of the first things I dropped was not every call, no offense to this wonderful Zoom video event, not every call is a video. We can go to audio. We don't need to stress everyone looking a certain way or getting their backgrounds or their, circle lamps just right. So you get to move on very quickly. That plan pruning has turned out to be incredibly essential and is something I plan to take with us in the after times. We didn't know about it in the before times, and we've learned about it in the COVID times. On the healthcare side, under John Lewin, who's the leader of Emory Healthcare, they were about midway through a 5-year plan, and they had a different experience, one in which it was very gratifying because the most important elements of that plan as well turned out to be truly essential, including some key work that they had built around intensive care, PPE, and some other areas that turned out to be absolutely essential and are serving the healthcare side very well now that we're starting to move into the vaccination process in earnest. So that's my primary takeaway is, that which you'll need in crisis should be top of your list in any new role.
Oh, that's cool. Great answer, Doug. We asked people to put in the chat feature what they did, like Doug and like Tuisha, Yana, and Josh. We got a lot of great responses, but my favorite one is from Myra. When the COVID struck, she pivoted to wine tastings, and that was one of her answers. So I'm like, hey, that wins the award for the best answer and the best solution. Yana, let's go over to you because I'm going to ask you about how you were able to pivot your creative when COVID hit and production halted. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Once we realized COVID was here to stay and we looked at our messaging, we knew that what we had in the market prior to March that resonated with our consumers and our customers was no longer going to resonate, right? And so we had to think really quickly. There was no production. People, were at home, and we partnered with an amazing agency. We have 72andSunny, who's our creative agency. And we started thinking, what could we do? Could we shoot remotely? As many of you know in marketing, it takes planning and months of planning and multi-million-dollar campaigns to shoot, ahead of time. We didn't have that luxury. So what we were able to do, which I, in my career, have never been able to do, is produce 3 spots in 3 months. And what we looked at is what are consumers needing, during COVID. Obviously, they were not going to go out to dealership and buy cars. Dealerships were closed. So we had to consider what could they do and what can our clients really provide to the consumers, right? Knowing that dealerships were closed. So we partnered with 72. We came up with the right messaging. We shot everything remotely through Zoom. We casted through Zoom. Our actors had their own wardrobe. We would tell them how to, move the props. And it was amazing. We hired a producer who was great to work with. He shot for SNL, so he knew how to work with everybody. He knew what he was doing. And literally in 3 months, we were able to put out messaging that not only resonated with our consumers and help them, if they were in market to shop for cars, do so safely, but also helped our clients to continue to run their business while their dealerships were closed. And going forward, it's something that we're considering, right? Can we now that production is opening up a little bit, but do we need to do it the way that we used to do it? Does it have to be, shot in location? Do we have to all travel to LA or somewhere, right? Are there different things we can do to be more nimble and to be able to put out more messaging that resonates and to be able to be more creative of how we do it?
Awesome. Great answer, Yana. Thanks a lot. And as we're going through, I am monitoring some of the answers. I noticed that First of all, Jan, I just want to honor you with a great answer and a thorough answer. So I'm shifting gears to the theme of this, which has shifted from how did you deal with COVID to how much wine are you drinking during COVID? So because Peter Kelso responded that he's also doing wine tastings. Not to be outdone though, our friend Guy Powell is doing Scotch, beer, bourbon, wine, and cider tastings virtually. So we clearly have a theme going on here. So let's shift gears here real quickly. Tawisha, I'm going to turn to you again. Talk to us a little bit about how you're leveraging social media and other platforms to engage people with your brand during COVID.
Absolutely. And so actually, I think everyone here, I want to just acknowledge first that Doug, your answer around getting rid of what's unnecessary is spot on. It's actually part of what, what I'm going to actually speak to. And Josh, I want to acknowledge your answer, I think in a chat, where he talked about how they turn on their webcams. And I was going to say, as a parent, I loved that. And so taking that same beat, socially, what we really learned from our consumers or visitors who want to come to museum is we better understood what they wanted to see. Everyone's at home and everyone's just asking and was requesting certain things. And so for us, it was a great test. Similar to what I said to Josh, like, I don't know if I'm assuming they did know, but parents were looking for something to do and the aquarium had an answer for that. And so for us, when we think about music, the success of Versus, if you're not familiar with that, that's an Apple and a Versus where you could get two artists who sit and do song battles against each other. We recognize those types of things. We recognize the virtual concerts were becoming very, very popular. And so as a museum, we said, okay, what do we have? What are the synergies that we have? What the trends are happening? And how can we elevate, amplify, or bring something new into that? And so on our social media platforms, we did just that. We moved our artist chats onto a social platform. We call it Music Matters, where we had a more deeper conversation with artists and tied it back to the museum. We also started doing things such as mini videos that gave you insights and great facts to know around the museum. And you're like, oh, what's so innovative about that, Tawisha? It's not. That's my point. It's more of, we found out, again, what people were looking for and expected from us, and then the resources that we had on hand, and said, this is how we're going to serve and amplify. We weren't necessarily, we were trying to be innovative where we could be, but we were also trying to lean into what our zone was. And I think that's sometimes the mistake that we tend to do is like social media, and people jump out of their zone. Like no one wants to hear how Yana's trying to now sell, ice cream cones when that's not her business because ice cream seems popular. And so at the time we said, okay, here's where entertainment's taking it. What can we layer and add on to it as a museum? So we still give that same experience, but also something we know that our consumers wanted to engage in. And I hope that answers the question, Jamie.
It does. Yeah, great job, Tawisha. Thanks a lot for doing that. Josh, I'm going to come to you next, but before I do it, I'm checking some of the chat stuff going on. Alex Van Winkle, in terms of what they did to shift away from COVID, converted to Google Suite. Interesting. Daily online meetings and weekly client reports, enhanced analytics studio. Sherry converted to fully remote. She had chefs do virtual recipes. That's interesting. Video from students for housing market. Kimberly had something interesting in our industry, which is veterinary medicine. We've actually seen a dramatic increase in business and patients. So I'm going to actually follow up with a question for all the attendees in a second. We've implemented curbside and online check-in, more telemedicine, and online bill pay. So in the chat feature for our attendees, write in there whether you've seen an increase in revenues or visits or whatever metric you want to use, or a decrease. My business, I do workshops and speeches around the globe, was only off 10% last year. You can imagine the whole industry tanked, but I've actually found it surprisingly, robust given that we all shifted. So I'd be curious for everybody's responses over there, and then we'll shift over. While people are typing in some of their responses, I'm going to ask Josh this question. Josh, what did you find to be the most effective communication strategy for the Georgia Aquarium during this period?
I think, Jamie, the most straightforward way to approach it is just transparency, and then probably access. It's we're an organization that people have a visual connection with. Like when you come to Georgia Aquarium, you come to see that whale shark that's swimming behind me. You come to see the beluga whales, and we wanted to be able to take advantage of that. So particularly during the summer, we didn't have any guests in the building, so we had really unprecedented access to be able to share with our, with our fans and our constituents. So we, our social team and our animal teams were able to do some pretty amazing things. Like, let's let the penguins kind of cruise through the building and videotape it. And we actually had a really fun partnership with the Humane Society, and we had puppies. I mean, like, who doesn't want puppies, right?
Yeah.
So we had some really fun things that we're able to do. And that was, what we found to be really engaging, and something that we probably wouldn't have been able to do on a normal day where, we were filled with attendees. So just, again, kind of transparency, showing people that's what we're doing, and giving them access to let them know we're still caring for those animals. We're still doing everything that we need to do. And we want them to come back. And so that's, I think that was the most effective for us.
That's great. That's great. Terrific. Just monitoring some of the answers to how is your business doing. Brittany, who clearly works for a golf cart company, had a huge increase. Yeah, golf was no offense to golfers, and I'm a golfer, was a slow decline because of the changes in millennials and all that sort of stuff. But now everybody's golfing again. So glad to see that impacted Brittany in a positive way. 15% increase for Rob in order intake. And then a lot of other answers here that we went on. Penguins were cool. Okay, cool. So let's keep going. Wow, we got a lot of answers there. Now, remember, for attendees, part of our goal here is for you to ask questions for Tuisha, Yana, Josh, and Doug. So I'll be monitoring that for questions you want to ask them specifically. With that in mind, let's turn over to Doug. Doug, COVID has changed all of our lives. How did it change yours and the work you do in telling and placing Emory's best stories? How did you adjust to that specifically as it relates to your job?
In another part of my life, in a prior professional life, as Jamie, as you know, and some of you, panelists and attendees might know as well, I have a background in political outreach. And I like to say in that space that desperation drives innovation. And that was certainly the case when it came to our storytelling at Emory. Now, on one side of my shop, the editorial and social media side, they moved almost seamlessly to digital, to working digital. Where they became challenged was in the asset creation that they needed. So we had to ask ourselves, how are we going to get content for a campus that is, nearly emptied out? And I saw somebody was speaking to this as well. We are on lighter density, around half of our campus now. In the fall, we were around 40%, so a click lower than that. So the campus necessarily, with social distance, mask wearing, and everything else, felt even emptier than say summertime, when we'd have various meetings and camps going on. So whereas the owned content side of my team suddenly had a new challenge in asset creation, and I should have thought of puppies. That's a good one. I'm going to borrow that. I'm going to throw some puppies up in the quad, see what happens. But
I know people.
Good. And I'm surprised there's many puppies left, given pandemic puppies that are driving somebody else's business in the attendee chat. On the media relations side, this has been a revolution for that team. Under the leadership of my head of media, Susan Chana, we started thinking about, how are we going to meet reporters and journalists where they live, which is inside of these Brady Bunch boxes that all of us live right now. So we rolled out fairly quickly Zoom briefings and Facebook Lives. Facebook Lives are more designed for our consumer audiences. That's where we teach up on COVID, what's happening with it, what's happening with the new variants, how and when might I get a vaccine, talking to parents about the experience maybe for their students at Emory. Jamie, thank you very much. So that made sense. We had to bring the right message through the right medium. Zoom briefings turned out to be fantastic for journalists, and frankly, are really the way we're going to do that work moving forward. The idea that we would ask journalists to go to a physical place, or mandate that they go to a physical place, provided we're not showing off, say, a new building or a new exhibit of some sort, and even in that case, doesn't necessarily have to be done any other way than virtually. So we've had tremendous success with over 35 and counting Zoom briefings thus far, and we've been able to effectively move in our competitive set from a position of around 9th or 10th to 2nd during this crisis. And that is, by the way, across all fronts, not just what might be obvious, the health sciences research side around COVID. It's around basic sciences. It's around academic and thought leadership in that space and otherwise.
Awesome. Wow, some good results. Looks like the COVID is impacting us, but mostly what we're hearing is in positive ways. We have a question from Paul that's directed for Jana. So I'm going to read the question here for Jana. I'd love to know, and Paul Carpenter, a good friend of mine, says, I'd love to know how the major auto shows are going. Given the hybrid model and less attendees in person, what else are you doing to bring that IRL, which stands for something, I'm trying to think, in real life experience to a digital first audience? Wow, I'm hip and cool because I figured out what IRL was on the fly. So Jana, if you can answer that question, but how's that all going for y'all?
Sure, great question. Yeah, you know, we are trying to, as the industry, adjust to more digital, right? So to that point, yes, shows are now more virtual. We just did our first virtual event for our customers, and we're learning as we go. What we do have an advantage of is having an incredible team of editorial staff that are able to work with the show producers. They're able to get first looks, and we're ensuring that our customers, whether they're dealers or whether they're customers who are looking for cars, have enough content. So we're publishing more content than we ever have to ensure that we're keeping everybody in the loop, because as you mentioned, we can't, you know, attend shows, we can't do it in person. So we're making sure that through content, through publishing it, through ensuring that we have the right access in showcasing what consumers want to know and what our clients want to know. That's how we're ensuring that we're staying abreast. And you know, we're working within our industry to make sure that everybody knows what's happening and kind of coming together and making sure that everybody's well informed.
Good, excellent, Jana. Thanks a lot for that. We've got a lot of really interesting questions going on here, which is terrific. Here's one from Salita Owens. This goes out to everybody on the panel. So just give me a raised hand if you'd like to answer this one. For all panelists, what platform or system have you put into place to keep track of your consumers to see where they're coming from? And how do you keep them engaged and returning? So the question is, what platform do you use software-wise, software as a service, anything, where you can keep track of your consumers and see where they're coming from, and how do you keep them engaged and returning? Anybody want to raise their hand on that one? Jana, was that you? Josh? Yeah, Jana. Oh, Jana wins because she actually.
Oh, she did it the real way.
I know she did. She used the actual feature. So Jana, go ahead. You win that, and then Josh will come to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, so we track where consumers come from. We have Google tags on all our media, so we can see where consumers are coming from and what they're doing on site. The reason I raised my hand is because it kind of ties into, you know, having the right content. So everybody who is in the market to buy a car, they're not, you know, coming back all the time once they buy a car. But if we have the right content that they're interested in, even after they bought a car, whether it's on recall, whether it's on how to maintain your car, that's how we continue to drive them back to the site and continue to get them engaged by ensuring that we're providing the right information for them.
Cool, great. Josh, how about you?
Similar to what Jana said, we definitely are using all of the Google Tag Manager to go ahead and track any of the activities. We've also shifted most of our media over, and we're utilizing our digital media. We're utilizing Amazon as our DSP so that we've got a lot of that back and forth intelligence in terms of where the consumers are seeing our content and giving us access to them as retargeting messages. So, you know, that was a very powerful tool for us to be able to take advantage of over the summer to then push our ads and our content back into the customers after they've seen the content like our webcams.
Good, excellent. Brief plug on this topic. My next book will be published by McGraw-Hill in September. It's about one-to-one marketing, where we can hyper-target people based on data and then track them not only digitally, but if they buy the product at the grocery store or at Home Depot or whatever. So it's a book that's basically about the ability to follow people around and do it in a privacy sensitive way where you're not actually following individuals as much as you're following data sets. Let's go over to Christine. She's got a question. When the pandemic hit, we were coincidentally doing a company-wide budget review, and shocker, marketing was asked to make a significant cut. Boy, that's the first time that's ever happened. As the C-suite realized the pandemic was here to stay, they tightened the belts even more due to fear panic. Simply put, marketing always seems to be the first on the chopping blocks. Here's Christine's question. How do you educate outdated minds on the true value of marketing if they are trained as sales first operators? Somebody just raise your real hand here if you want to answer that. Yeah, Tuisha.
I'll take a stab at it, but I was also like, I feel like I'm in a game show. I was looking for the
Right.
raise hand button and didn't know what to do.
Right.
So you actually just discussed it. I think what's extremely important, and one of the things that I live by, and this is just in my marketing career, is data. The more resources you have to be able to show that because we did this is because we got that is the way that I go. And I'm simplifying it, but I think it's just that simple. I think marketing has become, unfortunately, synonymous with entertainment. They think that what we're doing is trying to entertain consumers. We're just trying to raise brand awareness. We're just trying to be showy. And that's not actually it. There is an actual connection in regards of how many times the ad has been seen or something that we're doing actually impacts the purchase of it. Without awareness of what this thing is, no one's going to want to buy it. And so we just talked again, Jamie just kind of, talk about a book he's going to put out. I think everyone should buy that book because I even wrote that down. I think the more sciences we have, or the more tools that we use that helps us connect that is more than just impressions, but these impressions raise this, and because of that, we're able to do this and actually push out sales or push out awareness. So again, just speaking to, I'm going to speak to where I am, but I'll speak on my media experience. That was one of the hardest things we have to explain to media, especially as I focus on multicultural media. So you think marketing budgets are cut, come for the multicultural budgets. They always seem to get cut as well. But then I remind facts or insights are also very helpful. So from a multicultural world, there's 73% of white Americans believe that Black culture is pop culture. So even though African Americans only represent 13% of the population, their impact on sales and impact on brands are much greater than that. So when you invest $1 there, it's going to double or triple, not only from their dollar, but from whom they also impact. And so when you ground in insights like that, that starts to connect the dots. I'm not just doing this because I think it's a great thing to do, or doing it for entertainment factor, or I'm going with the most popular thing to do. But the insights, the tools, the resources as a marketer are very, very important to show what your KPIs are, how you delivered on the information, and also why you're investing in what you're investing in.
Cool. Great answer there. Awesome. Thank you, Tuisha. Appreciate it. I've got a question for Taylor. And let's do a lightning round where we shorten the answers to this to a sentence or two so that we can make sure if we can get through all the panelists on this next question, because Taylor asked it and then Valerie said it was a great question. Here's a question. Our team has been discussing a paradox around social media, and I'm curious if anyone else feels the same tension. Social media obviously became needed for virtual connection, but at the same time feels right as it is at the center of national dichotomies and hot topic issues, especially around such a political year. Here's the question: is anyone else felt the tension, and how do you navigate the functional use of it, but also mindfully use social media that doesn't merely fuel the issues and conflicts that it fuels? So the question essentially is, hey, how are you using social media given that it can inflame things sometimes as opposed to bring us together? By the way, a plug for Bruce Springsteen's commercial on the Super Bowl about Jeep, where he was talking about coming back to the middle, which is something I'm trying to preach to all of my friends. We need as a country to come back to the middle and stop demonizing the left and the right. Let's go to the middle and be Americans. But given the social media thing, and Doug, I'm going to ask you to start this one because you're kind of politically minded. The question is basically, has anyone else felt the tension that social media brings to the table, and how do you navigate functional use of it, but also mindfully use social media so that it doesn't merely fuel the issues and conflicts that it fuels? Doug, first with you.
Sure. Well, actually, springboarding off of Tuisha's stellar answer, that it really is about the metrics that matter. And the metrics that matter need to be established early on. Talk about one of those things you want to do in peacetime, because that is a matter of finding the metrics that drive your business, whatever it might be, and then evangelizing those metrics to leadership. I cannot understate the importance of that. And I'll be honest, we hadn't done enough of that, pivoting to your question, Jamie, on the social media side before we jumped into or were pushed into, like everyone, the pandemic. I actually looked back into my email records to find like the earliest mention of this coronavirus, which is what we originally sort of called it at the time in our records from our research side. And it was earlier than I would have liked it to have been. It was really late January. It was sort of something from the health sciences side saying, okay, the situation that you might be hearing about, overseas is going to come here and maybe a real challenge and maybe a bigger one than people are really reconciling right now. And my first instinct in that moment was there's going to be a lot of mis and disinformation on social media. We're going into an election year. That mis and disinformation is only going to rise. And the best service we can provide as a research school, as a school of higher ed, is to be that home of truth. At the same time, realizing that we would have opinions that our subject matter experts rightfully might place in the New York Times, might place in the Chronicle of Higher Education, might place in NPR or Fox News. So I'm thankful that one of the things we decided to do early on in my leadership is we resuscitated an Emory News social media handle. So Emory News is where those quotes go. And that allowed us to maintain our voice around truth and the science and the realities, the shared realities we all face on our primary social media handles at Emory University and the like. The other thing we decided to do is move very quickly from what's now to what's next. We decided in March that the numbers were going to start to drown people, that our ability to understand what we were facing would be blinded by the size and scope of what might be a very fast moving contagion. And therefore, we had to help people understand not only what is happening now, but also what they will have to do next. So we looked at things like behavioral psychology, what's going to happen to families and schools. Can kids get together in play date scenarios? How are we going to get food delivered? All of those questions about what's next quickly became the more engaged content on social media than the standard sort of numbers based, as everyone sadly became a little numb to what was happening with the overall numbers. I do continue to have major reservations about the way in which social media activates or doesn't activate around fact and truth. But I can say that I am really gratified and heartened by not only through the pandemic, but a summer of issues around equity, equality, and justice. There were moments again and again of real connection that could only happen in places like Instagram and could only happen in places like Facebook, because that's where people were connecting to those issues, in addition to obviously if they chose to protesting or doing more on that front. So it's almost like, I know we're talking about pandemic, but that was also a big part of 2020 for us.
Good answer. And Doug, you got a new follower on @Emory News from Allison Karp, who signed up while we were talking. So let's do.
Thank you.
We're rounding the bend here. We're going to do 2 quick lightning rounds. Keep your answers to 20, 25 seconds. And we're going to start with Yana, and then we'll move to Tawisha, and then Josh, and then Doug. Starting with Yana, what's one key decision that you made which helped you maintain or even grow your business at this time? 20 seconds, go.
Oh, good question. The biggest decision we made is to switch agencies during a pandemic. It's really hard to switch agencies without a pandemic, but trying to do it during pandemic is very hard. However, we brought in new thinking. A new agency was along with us. We have Hearts and Science. They're fantastic. They were along with us to lead us through the pandemic. They didn't have preconceived notions. They didn't know anything else but how to push us forward. And that has really done well for our business.
I'm glad to see that the shift in agencies was good for you, Yana. I come out of the agency world. Usually what happens is clients say, sales did not go up under you, so we're firing you. In your case, you said there's a pandemic and that's your fault. We're firing you and getting a new agency.
Exactly.
It's the first time that excuse has been used. No, I'm kidding. But
I'm not sure. I'm not sure the science would have backed her up on that. Just speaking for the science.
Right. And I'm glad to see that it worked out well for you. Obviously, it was a good decision. So well done. Tuisha, 20 seconds. What kind of thing did you do that was a key decision that you made during the pandemic?
Does thinking count in as 20 seconds?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we decided to do, big decision, was how we were going to leverage key moments in time for the museum. So for example, our ribbon cutting was during Martin Luther King holiday. Amazing. Instead of trying to like fight different pieces or create some noise, we leaned into those key months and those key moments and really use them to kind of, again, articulate what we're doing at the museum. And also just to kind of keep, be in the wave of where folks' attention was to keep us relevant.
Okay. Good, great answer. By the way, I'm gonna still do Josh and Doug for this question, but I'm gonna queue up the next question so you can be thinking about it. The next question after this on our lightning round of 20-second answers is, are there any pandemic-related initiatives you did that are here to stay? Which I think is kind of an interesting question. So, but before we get to that one, Josh, let's go to you. What's the one key decision that you made which helped you maintain or even grow your business at this time?
Can I start with the shameless plug?
Yeah, shameless plug away, fire away.
Well, I guess it's not a shameless plug because it's part of the answer, but we had, going into this, we were building a brand new exhibit. We were in the middle of construction of our new shark exhibit. And so we had shut down the building and we're trying to figure out, like, that is a huge initiative for us to focus on. So I guess the decision now is go see the aquarium because we got the new shark exhibit. But we did that we kept our media on a slow trickle so that we could keep everything running. And we had our social media turned on basically full blast so that we could get the messaging in front of our customers. And then when we started to re-up our media spend, our marketing spend, we were able to take advantage, like I said earlier, kind of that remarketing opportunity. And then we tried to turn the negative into a positive. So it was like that idea of 6 feet apart. Now we can make the best selfies, right? Because you've got more room in the building, and cover your beak and wash your paws, and fun plays like that to get people's attention to say, this is a safe place to be. How's that?
Great, that's excellent. Terrific, great answer. Doug, in 20 seconds or less, what's your answer to the question?
I'm sorry, I was so fascinated by the answer. Could you repeat it quickly, Jamie?
No, that's okay. What's one key decision you made which helped you maintain or even grow your business during this time?
Well, I think I mentioned it earlier. One is the idea of virtualizing media relations and media engagement, and the side product of that was that we now have an entirely new audience of subject matter experts, researchers, professors, and the like, who may not have necessarily been comfortable with a traditional, interview, are now eager to hop on a Zoom. So we've not only opened up more opportunity for the storytellers and journalists, but we've opened up a whole new universe of subject matter experts who can broadcast literally from their home. That is here to stay. And frankly, I think it's a better way of doing it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And that may actually work for your answer for the next question, which we're doing on this lightning round. Guy, do we still have a few minutes for one more?
You got a couple minutes. Yeah, have at it. No, the last round would be great.
Okay, real quickly, are there any pandemic related things that you've done that are here to stay? Yana, take it away.
Sure. So we, when the pandemic started, we created a new product for our dealers to be able to sell virtually. And usually product creation, similar to creating a spot for TV, takes forever, right? You have to work with product and research. We were able to do it in a couple of weeks. And we learned how to do it quickly, how to adjust quickly, and how to create new products, come together as a team from marketing to product to analytics, and do it fairly quickly. And I think that's here to stay.
Awesome. Great. Tuisha, real quickly, what's one thing that's here to stay?
Yes, one thing quickly here to stay is our digital programming. I mentioned it earlier that everything we're doing in-person and digital platform. By way of example, we created a virtual concert platform that's very unique. It's actually live, not pre-recorded. So we're able to, and it's actually through a partner, if you will, as well as with our agency. So we can actually give a live concert feel, but it's all happening virtually on multiple platforms at one time. That is definitely here to stay because it has definitely increased our touch to our audience. So that's
Awesome. Great, Tuisha. Thank you. Josh, how about you?
Our timed ticketing for entry, I think, is going to be something that's going to stick around for a while. Our touch-free turnstiles for admission, all of the safety-related things are going to be here for the long term. And I think there's a couple of things that we started to turn on, like virtual tours and virtual field trips. We built them as pandemic-specific things, but I think those are things that we can use to reach a much larger audience that's outside of the immediate Atlanta area. So yeah, those are all here to stay.
That's cool. Doug, anything you want to add in?
Yeah, I was just going to say two things. One, on sort of the business process front, persistent and real pruning of process. Willful reconsideration of why we're doing what we're doing and dropping that which doesn't work, which somehow magically is just easier when we're virtual. I think on the personal front, I term it aggressive vulnerability. I have had amazing conversations on personal front with business mentors, leaders, friends that I haven't reconnected with in a long time, simply by saying, hey, I just want to, do a one-on-one Zoom with you for 40 minutes and hear how you're doing. So bringing that sort of sense of, like I said, confident vulnerability, our full selves to our work, because frankly, if I didn't have a background, you would see it all anyway, is a way I would prefer to do business moving forward. So
Cool.
that's a mix of personal and professional.
Awesome. Great job to all the panelists. I'm going to turn it over to Guy. My name is Jamie Turner. I'm an author, a professor, and a speaker at events and corporations around the globe. I'm going to put my email address down here in case anybody wants to reach out. But Guy, take it away.
Jamie, yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank everyone on the panel. Thank you, Yana. Thank you, Tuisha, Doug, and Josh. Really great. But most of all, also, thank you to Acquia. I put the bit.ly for the Sugar Wish into the chat window. Hopefully you can find it in the stream there. Please get one of those and let me know how many red little things are in there. That would be fantastic. And otherwise, want to thank everyone for coming today. Fantastic event, really appreciate it. And the talk about the pandemic pivot is definitely critical. And now we're back into a new pivot, which is the de-pandemic pivot. So looking forward to discussions around that. So again, thank you, everyone. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.